Mike Bohn here at UFC Fight Night 138. Weigh-ins just wrapped up. I'm standing next to UFC commentator Dan Hardy. Dan, as I said, we just finished weigh-ins, but first I want to ask you, you've traveled all over the world. You've taken crazy boat rides. You've gone in the mountains, all that kind of things. What do you make of Moncton?
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, when we got off the plane, it was we had a window and an aisle seat each. It was such a narrow plane. So we came in, we skidded onto the runway and got out, and it's just fog. Just as far as the eye can see, there was nothing here. We were kind of wondering where we were, but to be honest, since we've got into town, the buzz around the event, the arena's supposed to be amazing as well. I've not seen it until later today, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it. These fans are hungry for some fights.
Yeah, and I enjoy, for me personally, covering these events the most because it's so small. There's not a ton of media here. You get more exposure to the fighters, more time and everything.
Yeah.
Do you kind of find the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, more accessible, more. The fights are around more. They're more accessible, more available. You see them walking through the lobby a lot. Whereas obviously, if it's a big fight week in Vegas, you might not see anybody on the card until weigh-in day. So it's nice here because, especially, I can not only fighters, but I can also talk to camps and coaches and friends and just kind of get a more of a feeling of each fighter individually, which is really good for commentary.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, to get into the card a little bit, the main storyline, I think, coming out of the weigh-ins, Michael Johnson does miss weight by 1 pound. He's fined 20% of his purse. Artem Lobov told us yesterday that if he does miss weight, he was not going to accept any of his money. I spoke to the commission. He said they have to give him the check. It's procedure. At that point, it's up to Artem if he wants to give back to Michael Johnson.
Yeah.
First, just what do you make of Michael missing weight? Do you think that impacts the fight at all?
No, honestly, I don't. He seemed very alert today. He was still sweating when he had to come down and get on the scales. So I don't think his cut was particularly bad. I just think it was a short notice fight. And, just to get body weight down, it takes some time. Your body's going to cling on to stuff, especially because, he's been off traveling around Europe. He's been in Moscow and stuff. So he's been enjoying the foods of the world. And obviously when he got back to training camp and got the call that he was up in 2 weeks, it was a bit of a push for him. But a huge respect to Artem for not taking that money because, Artem recognises what it is. He recognises that Michael's done him a favour by stepping in and making sure he's still on this card. So it's a big statement, but it's a good thing for Artem to do.
Yeah, Johnson did say he was 30 pounds over when he got the call about 2 weeks ago. He thought he was going to make it, and he came damn close. I think if he had a little more time or that extra hour or something, he would have made it. But in terms of the fight itself, all things being equal, how do you see that going? I think Artem even agreed this is probably one of the biggest names, the toughest fights he's had personally, and that's why he chose it. He said he got multiple options when Zubairo was taken off the card. He chose Johnson because he thought it was the toughest fight. Just how do you see this one kind of playing out?
It certainly is a tough fight for him. I think there are things that make it difficult, and I think there are things that make it easy. One of the things, obviously, is that Michael Johnson's a southpaw, and Artem's number one sparring partner is a southpaw. So there'll be a lot of familiarities in the way he moves. The other thing as well, Michael Johnson, he's very good at a few particular things. He's got good kicks. He's got good inside, outside, low kicks, but his straight left is the main thing, and he's got good wrestling as well. Footwork is going to be the key here because, as we know from Artem's fights, Artem marches forward. He walks people down, and the downside to that is that it can be predictable, especially when you've got someone as fast as Michael Johnson. But at the same time, the times we've seen Michael Johnson struggle has been when he's been put under a lot of pressure, and we know Artem is a pressure fighter, so it's a fascinating fight. It really is, and it is definitely the toughest test for Artem so far in his career.
Yeah, and looking at the main event now, Anthony Smith and Volkan Ozdemir both looked very good, stepping on the scale and everything. Anthony Smith, didn't even have to undress or anything. Right. He's, I think he can make this weight class pretty comfortably. He said he was on weight as of like Thursday night or Wednesday night or something like that. So, what did you just make of how they looked and on the scales today?
I think they both look great. I think they both look really strong. As you said, Anthony Smith woke up on weight. He came down here and stepped on the scales, and I think that's it alleviates a massive amount of pressure for him to not have to be thinking about the weight cut. The previous conversations I've had with him, the main focus of training camp was just to get his weight down, and now he's not even thinking about that at all. He can think entirely about his opponent, and as he's climbed up the rankings, he needs that entire focus because these guys are very good. And Volkan Ozdemir wins the fights in the narrowest of margins. Oftentimes when people are rushing him, which if you look at Anthony Smith's fights, a lot of the time he's catching people rushing forward because he is so fast and tall. The difference for me here is that Anthony Smith fills the gap as he's sprinting forward with long-range punches, and Volkan is the one that will try and use the short-range counter punches. So again, the sport is the same across the board. It's a battle of range as always, but for me, this one it's purely a boxing range, and I think Anthony Smith might be able to, at least touch Volkan before he starts having to deal with Volkan's pressure because of his speed and length.
Yeah, and it's interesting. These guys have a lot of early finishes, a lot of first-round finishes, particularly at 205 for Smith. Came and won his 2 fights very quickly. He said at media day he's going to demolish Volkan. He said this fight isn't even going to be close. On Monday, the headlines you guys are going to be reading are that Volkan was never that good. He got pushed up the rankings too quickly, and we never really knew how good he is, but we found out he's not that great. I know you can't make predictions for the fight, but are you comfortable saying that this is going to be a quick fight? Like, do you feel like this is going to be another, either no time or Anthony Smith is going to get it done quickly? Do you feel that? I feel kind of that way, but how do you see it going?
I mean, there's definitely that potential. Both of these guys are going to be obviously very excited to get in there. We don't know how Volkan's last performance affects him, because sometimes coming off a title loss, people get a little bit more cautious. Also, if he's not getting the stimulus that he's expecting from Anthony Smith, I think Smith might start working takedowns in this one. I think we might see him show a bit more of his game. And I also kind of feel like it might be a part of his game plan to get it into the second round. Mainly because, if you think Volkan's nickname, he's adopted the no-time nickname, which, in my opinion, puts a little bit of pressure on him to kind of live up to that. Like if your nickname's the Brawler and all of a sudden you become a technician, you're not living up to your nickname. And I feel like that no time, plus the way the UFC have marketed it, like these are 2 very, very fast finishers, I think at least one of the fighters will feel a pressure to live up to that. And just seeing them today, seeing them face off, I feel like Anthony Smith is in a much calmer state of mind to start to let the fight breathe a little bit. Whereas Volkan, I think he's expecting the rush, and I think he's expecting to be able to counter it with a short, tight left hook. Yeah,
definitely. The poster, has their fastest wins on there. That's definitely how it's been marketed. In terms of the rest of the card, anything that really stands out to you? The return of Artem Buehler is interesting after losing by omoplata, his first loss. Chris Fishgold making his UFC debut. Cage Warriors 3-time defending champion. Anyone else that you're really excited to see on this card?
Well, to be honest, obviously, I'm very excited to see Chris Fishgold, because I know how hard he's worked to get to this position, and I know that a lot of people were expecting him to be on the Liverpool card, and that passed him by. And the timing's right for him. He can shine on his own as an individual this weekend, and he's got a real tough test in Calvin Kattar, who's going to test him at, definitely in the striking range, but with great takedown defense as well, which is really what Chris's game's all about: getting people down, smashing them into the fence, proper old school ground and pound style. But more than anything, it's the light heavyweight picture on this card for me. Obviously, the main event's light heavyweight. We've also got Jan Vellante against Ed Herman, which is going to be just a scrap. Yep. It's going to be a war. Both guys like each other. They both throw heavy. They're both, big, powerful, plodding light heavyweights that just land with heavy punches every time they throw. And then, you've got Patrick Cummins, Misha Serkinov. Fascinating, because I don't feel like we've seen the best of either of those fighters yet. I certainly feel like Misha Serkinov is in a better state of mind now. He's moved to Vegas and he's changed a few things with his camp. But, having said that, Patrick Cummins, he's moved to Alliance. I feel like he started to round his game out a little more to support his really strong wrestling background. And, we know 3 light heavyweight fights on the same card. A lot could change this weekend, and we could be talking about some really, really interesting matchups in the near future, based on what we've got on this card. Yeah,
especially, I kind of spoke to some of the guys about that media today. It seems like it's going through a bit of a, makeover, especially with, Cormier is getting the belt taken away, assuming Jones and Gustafsson actually happens. So a lot of movement at 205 coming up. But, definitely something to watch. Dan Hardy, I really appreciate you taking the time. All goes down Saturday night here in Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada. All the coverage you need on MMAjunkie.com.